Well, hello, General Hospital Daily Recap fans. Today's daily recap is for Thursday, November the 13th, 2025. It was a pretty good day. Yikes. Poor Rocco. But he protect was protecting his brother and his sister. Okay. Now, of course, we saw where Dalton took him to where the police were, where Laura was, because he didn't necessarily know that was the mayor's grandson. It was a thief that he caught. So Laura pretty much strong armed him, and not really strong armed him. She says, "You will take your hands off of my grandson." Right? And he goes, "I'm taking him to the police." She says, "Let me tell you something. No matter what has happened, that does not give you the right to put your hands on a minor. Now take your hands off of him now." And he looked at her and he took his hands off of Rocco. Rocco's like, Grandma, I'm sorry. So she pulls Rocco over, behind her, and she goes, "Shh, don't say anything." And he goes, "I caught him. He broke into my lab." And Boyle was just like, ooh, right? She goes, "How do you know he broke in? Was there any sign of forced entry?" "No, it's a secure lab with a fob. I have posted all over," because she goes, "Well, perhaps he got confused. Maybe the door was left open." Right? Coming up with all kind of excuses, which weren't the real deal, right? So Boyle said, "Okay, then why don't we have his pockets checked?" Because Dalton said, "You can only get in with a key fob. That's how secure it is." So Boyle said, "Check his pockets." And Laura turned and she looked at him. And he kind of gave her that look. She's thinking, "Oh my God." So he reaches into his pocket and he holds up the key fob. And she's looking at, they're not seeing her look like that. Rocco is. She's kind of like, "Oh, honey." Right? So Boyle says, "Oh, there we have it. I'm gonna go get the campus police now." So Laura's trying to talk Dalton out of Preston. She goes, "Look, I've got a solution for this. Yes, he was in your lab and he shouldn't have been. He's a minor. Shouldn't have been there though. But you had no rights in assaulting him." "I never assaulted him." "Oh, you had your hands all over him, roughing him over here, pretty much roughing him up over here." She goes, "Why don't we both just let this go?" And Dalton is just looking at her, right? And then Boyle comes back with the police and, like, "Arrest him." Dalton says, "He broke into my lab." So the cop says, and he had the key fob. Maybe that's when Rocco took the key fob out. I don't quite remember. So anyway, the officer says, "Okay, you're under arrest. You have the right to remain silent." And poor Rocco is just shaking. He's so upset and scared, he's shaking. And Laura says, "Honey, I'm coming with you." And Boyle says, no. What about the debate?" Laura looked at him and said, "My grandson needs me, and I'm going with him." Well, of course, she had to follow in her own car, but whatever. "I'm going with him." And she goes, "Rocco, honey, don't you say a word. And he goes, right? So Boyle says, what am I supposed to tell your constituents? What am I supposed to tell all the people out there? She goes, you could tell them I had a family emergency, okay? Because my grandson needs me. She walks on out like, when push comes to shove, darn the position, I'm going to be with my grandson. So Charlotte arrives at the Britt. They tell Jason, Rocco, and Charlotte about how they broke into Dalton's lab, and Britt is just looking. And Rocco is he's arrested. He's going down to the police station. They're taking him, to jail. And Danny's like, we need help. And so Charlotte says, I gotta go tell my mother. So Charlotte heads to go out of here. And Britt says, wait a minute, wait. You can't leave. She goes, yes, I am. I have to tell my mother. Britt says, that's a phone call. She goes, nope. I have to tell her face to face. Right? So Britt says, okay, then I'm going to drive you. I guess Britt felt that maybe Charlotte was in a state of mind that she shouldn't be driving herself, but Britt never really cares about anybody other than herself and Rocco. But so Britt takes Charlotte. And Danny goes, Dad, you gotta help. We need help. You gotta help us. So he goes, let's go. He takes Danny to Alexis, right? Now, back at the hospital, Charlotte arrives with Britt. And she goes up to Lulu and Dante, who had just, waiting for word on Ned. And they said, Charlotte, okay, what's going on and why is she with you? Talking about Britt. She goes, Rocco's in trouble. And they said, did she have it? She goes, no, she just drove me here. Right? And they said, what happened? Well, we broke into a lab on PCU campus, and she goes, me, Danny, and Rocco broke in, and Rocco got caught. And Dante's like, you know, what? And Lulu was like, wait, what? And so Dante says, no, no, you start and you tell me this from the beginning. So she tells, but she doesn't tell about the MNGO part, right? She tells a palatable story. And now Dante and Lulu are headed to the PCPD. Britt goes into one of the exam rooms and she makes a phone call. I need you to come to GH right away. And I'm thinking, who's she calling? She called Sidwell. Sidwell comes in and he says, you know, I don't take kindly to being summoned. Right? He's thinking, first that doggone Kane and now you. And so she goes, my son is in trouble and I need your help. And he goes, wait, you don't have a son. Yes, Rocco is Lulu and Dante's, but he was my son first. I carried him, I delivered him, and I raised him for a while. He needs, and I need you to make this go away. He goes, what? Make what go away? And she goes, he got caught breaking into Dalton's lab. And Sidwell was like, oh my goodness. you know, she goes, he says, that's a secure lab. It's got sensitive. And she goes, we can hash and talk all about that later. What I need you to do, he goes, well, what do you expect me to do? He says, rein Dalton in. She said that. And he goes, rein him in. He's the one that's pushing for my son to be arrested. I need you to rein him in and make those charges go away. And Sidwell says, how am I supposed to accomplish that? And Britt's putting the stuff back in her purse. She goes, look, I know how you feel about loyalty. Well, that goes both ways. And in order for me to work my best and be happy, I need this taken care of. She says, you know, Dalton is some, she didn't say sleaze, but that's the only word I can think of right now. You know, Dalton is a sleaze ready to sell you out to the highest bidder. I don't care what you have to do. Just make this go away. And she just goes out the exam room. And Sidwell was standing there like, for one, who she thinks she talking to? For two, what? So he goes to Dalton. And Dalton, he says, I hear, he goes, I'm going to talk to you for one about the security in your lab. You know, I am very disappointed. And he goes, well, that punk kid, they broke into my lab and I'm going to make sure he is severely punished. And Sidwell says, you are not going to do that. He says, what are you talking about? I'm not. He says, if you don't make this go away, he said, that's going to bring undue attention to this lab. The police are going to want to investigate the lab. We don't need that kind of attention at all on our project. So you will make this go away. And Dalton looked at him and says, oh, no, not after the way Mayor Collins embarrassed me, publicly embarrassed me. I'm gonna make sure her grandson is punished to the fullest extent of the law. And he walks out on Sidwell and slams the door. And Sidwell's looking like, okay, look, he one person too many that walked out on me tonight, especially when I know he the turncoat, right? So he's just looking like, mm. So we're going to see what Sidwell does to Dalton because one thing Sidwell was right with his reasoning. Don, because Rocco is going to say we had reason to believe that he's been doing illegal testing on animals in that lab, right? So anyway, now PCPD, Nathan and Chase are talking. Chase is saying this is one of our highest priority cases, the murder of a judge. Well, stupid son of a gun, you sure aren't investigating it because you spending all your spare time taking a few days off sick leave to personally investigate Willow's case. So I'm sorry, the judge's case is not that big a priority to you. He's trying to push that off on Nathan so that Nathan doesn't watch or work with him on what he's doing with Willow's case. That's exactly what Chase is about, right? And he was telling Nathan, now this could be a conflict of interest for the both of us. He said, how? He said, well, Judge Herring was the one who ruled in Willow's divorce and custody case. And Chase says, oh, and Willow being my niece. And he says, and me being her being my ex-wife. Chase says, but I am happily married now. But I do care for Willow. You're happily married. But whatever, Chase. So then Dante comes in and he says, has Rocco been brought in yet? And they're both looking at him. No, he's gonna be arrested. And they're like, wait, what? And just as they're saying that, Rocco is brought in. But I had that picture on top where the cop was arresting him. Rocco's looking at Laura, scared, and oh, grandma, kind of like, Grandma, what I do? No, Grandma. Now, I had to take that because that was a classic look on his face. And then Dante and Lulu are already there. Charlotte is there because she came with, who did Charlotte come with? Oh, Dante and Lulu. She was at the hospital and she told them she came when they came. So they see Rocco being brought in by the cop. He's just, oh my God, I'm so humiliated. I got my grandma, the mayor there, my father, the police commissioner there, my mother, the freelance reporter that wants to tell it all. But guess what? Morocco's a minor. So she shouldn't write about that. However, if it were any other minor, somebody else's teenage minor, would she? Or would she say the public has a right to know? Would she say that? Hmm. So anyway, um, she goes over, he looks and Dante is standing there and he goes, Dad, Dad, and Dante turns away from him and says, Detective West, can you take Rocco into the interrogation room? And Lulu says, he's a minor. I can go in with him, right? And Dante says, yes. So Nathan takes him in, takes the handcuffs off. Lulu's there. And Lulu says, can I have a moment, alone with my son? And Nathan says, sure. She goes, thank you, Nathan. And she walks out and she's like, what happened? Mom, I messed up. I messed up. She goes, and Charlotte has already told me she and Danny were there. So don't try to formulate a lie that it was just you. We already know. And he goes, but we did it for the right reason. We thought he was performing illegal tests on animals. Yeah. So she goes, honey, you're going to have to understand your actions have consequences. No matter what you thought was happening, you still broke the law to find out. And he's like, I know. Dad, is he mad? Is he really mad at me? She goes, yes, honey, he is. Right? So, meanwhile, we have be a little bit before this was happening, because you know how they cut in and out of scenes. Rick shows up at Sonny's house. And Sonny's like, Rick, what are you doing here? He goes, hello, Sonny. I'm here to talk to you. Sonny's like, I don't have time. Rick, he goes, Sonny, I really need you to hear me out. This is important. Sonny's like, come in, Rick. So he comes in. Rick is talking about he wants to bury the hatchet. He goes, now, what I'm about to ask you, I know you're going to want to initially say no, but I'm asking you not to do that and to just hear me out first. So Sonny's looking at him like, what you up to? And I was looking at him like, okay, what you up to? Because I know you want to get back at Alexis and Christina and Ava, but you can't get back at Sonny through Ava. Hmm. And he goes, I want you to let me be your lawyer. He goes, I already have a lawyer, Rick, the best in town. He goes, well, that's debatable. He says, but there are some other matters that you may not want Diane to handle. And Sonny's thinking like, and Sonny says, I can't trust you, Rick. Every time I have tried to trust you as a brother and bury the hatchet, you have stabbed me in the back each and every time. And Rick says, I know, but I've turned over a new leaf. I've been enlightened. I I had a life-altering experience that it's got me to really reassessing myself. And Sonny goes, yeah, I heard about your experience with it. He said the name of the cult, right? He goes, oh, and that really enlightened you. He goes, yes. He says, Sonny, I have hated you all my life. Hated you. And you know what? That's not the most important thing. He said, our daughters are sisters, and they're in a good place, even after they both lost their baby. It would be better if we could get along. And Sonny said, oh, for our daughters. He goes, yeah. He goes, and for our mother. And Sonny looked at him and I thought, oh, you pulling the Adela card? Uh-oh. My spidey senses were going saying, Rick, you up to something, brother. So Sonny says, no, you can't be trusted. I can't have a lawyer that I can't trust. Rick said, I tell you what, let me prove myself to you then. Sonny said, how? He says, what if I tell you that I have a way for you to keep your peers no matter how Measure C gets voted? And Sonny looked at him. He said, wait, how could there be a way? He goes, oh, what if I tell you there is a way? He goes, then Diane would know about it. And Rick says, like I said, I'm a better lawyer than Diane. He says, but Diane's specialty is not real estate law. I could get the job done. He goes, Sonny, just think about it. He goes, even if this is a one and done, I want to prove to you that I'm serious. So Rick turns to walk out the door, and Sonny's thinking, you know, he want to keep them peers. And let's face it, everybody, in soap opera land, there has to be a way. Sidwell's not going to get his peers. So we got to see how that is going to happen, right? So Rick leaves. Now, Gio and Emma were at the hospital and they heard everything that Charlotte told Dante and Lulu about Rocco. And they were like, oh my God. So they went to the side and he said, oh my God. They went to try to do it without us, even though I specifically called it off. Specifically. So they must have just felt that they could get it. Oh, so it must like, oh my God, it's all my fault for getting them involved. And Gio said, it's our fault. We did it together. You know, it's not just your, she goes, but it was my idea. I was so focused. I got to get this information on Dalton. I got to, bust him out. And each and every time it's a disaster. Yeah, chick, you almost caught a case and got expelled from the school. Yeah. So Gio said, okay, okay, I know what we're going to do. So he takes her hand, they leave. He goes to Sonny. Grandpa, I'm so happy you're here. You're home. And he goes, what's going on, Gio? We're in trouble. And he goes, okay, what do you mean you're in trouble? Well, really, it's Rocco? And perks Sonny up because that's his grandson. He goes, but it's all my fault. It's all because, and Emma says, no, it's all my fault. And so Gio says, we were in on it together. And so Sonny said, tell me what happened. So now they tell the whole story to Sonny. And he goes, but it is my fault. And Sonny said, yeah, you should have never involved minors. Right? Sonny wasn't, no, it'll be okay. No, he goes, you should have never involved minors. And so Jill said, I'm gonna go to the police. And Emma says, we'll go and we'll tell them it was all our idea and blah blah blah. Sonny says, no, no, no. That is not the way to handle that. Rocco's a minor. It's going to be a misdemeanor for Rocco. You two, on the other hand, are adults. And you're going to be tried as adults. He says, neither one of you were on campus tonight. You two are not involved. We need to keep it that way. So they look at him. So Jill said, but I got to do something. So Sonny says, not that, right? So Sonny makes a phone call. Rick is with Molly. Molly's talking about her book and she's reconnected with her father. And, he's really listening, present. It's almost like, yeah, those chicks did scare him straight. So he gets a phone call and he goes, Sonny? And he goes, you want to prove yourself to me? Then I got something I need done. And Rick is looking like, oh, okay. So now although Sonny's going to have to let Dante and the family know, Dante, Laura, that Rick is going to represent Rocco, because otherwise, how would they know? And they would try to get their own attorney, right? So we all know Rick is good, right? So now we got Britt working through Sidwell to try to help Rocco. Sonny's getting ready to have Rick help Rocco. And we all might be saying, why did they write in this whole Rick want to be Sonny's attorney situation? Unfortunately, the actress that plays Diane broke her leg, ankle, foot, whatever, and she can't work. She's out of commission. So they're craftily interjecting Rick into the storyline as a high-powered attorney, which he is, right? Until the actress that plays Diane recuperates enough that she could work. And she's older. She's our age. I mean, she may not be as old as me, but she might be my same age. She might be in her mid-60s. I didn't look it up. Takes us time for our bones to heal, right? We can't just ignore it and rush back to work. They would have to have her working in a wheelchair. Your Honor, wheel her into the courtroom. So right now, since there is no one that she needs to represent, like Michael has not been charged, because she would be the one to represent Michael. Sonny's already not going to be charged. Alexis is not going to be charged. So Diane is free to represent Michael if, in fact, he gets charged. Without that, Diane isn't needed right now. Now, one thing Rick said to Sonny that made sense. He says, look, you need someone that doesn't work so closely together. And Sonny's like, what are you talking about? He goes, for one thing, Alexis and Diane are partners. They have the same law firm. Alexis is representing Willow. Now throw in, we got Marco, who is Sidwell's son. He's an associate in the same office. He says, Sonny, don't you begin to think that Marco doesn't have his nose into your business. And he's telling his father everything. And Sonny's kind of like, but I still can't trust you, Rick, right? It went back. But Rick made a lot of sense there. So anyway, he goes, I am separate and I'm independent of them. And let's face it, I'm willing to do certain things that Diane won't. So now, we've got Alexis who's keeping Danny out of it because, oh, her and Jason, Danny's like, I've got to go and confess that I was there too. And she says, no, you don't. He goes, I can't let Rocco go through this alone. He said, Danny, you said yourself that the professor was going to find you and Charlotte. He goes, until Rocco made a noise. Alexis says, Rocco intentionally drew the attention from you two. He did it to protect mainly you, Danny. And Danny's like, yeah, because he knew that I would never be able to see Scout ever again. And he goes, and remember that. So don't let his sacrifice that he did, now you jump in to stand beside him, sacrificing yourself. She says that's not gonna lessen whatever is gonna happen to Rocco. He's still gonna be in the same amount of trouble. But you, on the other hand, Danny, now you're in trouble. And Drew Kane will stick his nose into it, and whatever influence he may have to try to send you to prison. And Jason looked at Danny, and Danny looked. She said, so you're saying nothing? And Jason said, you understand? You hear that, Danny? See, he goes, this is why I told you. Your actions. He goes, I know, Dad. I know. He goes, Jason's like, oh, you know. So they defuse Danny, right? Now, mind you, don't nobody have to defuse Charlotte. Right there in the police station. And Dante said, Detective West, I mean, Chase, would you, just kind of take Charlotte over there? And he goes, sure. So he walked Charlotte over to the side of the interrogation room. But Charlotte walked over first, and she's looking through the window at Rocco. And Chase comes over to her, and he was going to try to, so what happened? I mean, it's a shame, but what do you, Charlotte didn't give him the opportunity. He walked over and opened his mouth to her. She looked at him and said, you know what? Can I get a drink of water? Chase said, oh, sure. He walks away. I said, go ahead, Charlotte. You are your father's daughter. You really are. You kind of like, you ain't gonna get no information out of me. Nor do I feel guilty enough to say I was with my little brother. Gotta gotta love Charlotte. You really do. Okay. So when anyway, Britt comes down to the precinct. When she left Sidwell, she goes to the PCPD. And she's just standing there by the doorway, the entranceway, worried. What's going on? What's going on? And Nathan, he goes and he's standing by the doorway next to her. Not next to her, but they're both on the opposite side of the door, the entrance, the frame. And he looked over at her. He said, you shouldn't be here. And she looked at him and she said, I'm worried about my son. And she goes, I'm staying. And he's just looking. But the funny thing is, everybody, did you see the power dynamic there? Now, with Sidwell, Britt was pulling a tantrum thing, just get it done. With Nathan, and this is like it was in his hotel when he was in got brought to GH. And Lisa was all over him. Speaking of where is she? But anyway, she wanted to say she didn't even want to talk to him. She was nervous, right? And he was saying, you know what, we haven't had a chance to have a conversation. And she was just like, that's her boss. That is not Nathan. That's some kind of Nathan memories mapped with someone else. It is. Or it's been 7 years. It could all be Nathan's mind, but it has been mind controlled and it has been programmed. 7 years worth of programming, and he is the one in charge. You could see it, how nervous because she just kind of looked. He was like, you shouldn't be. She's like, I'm gonna be here. Talk about it. So he knew not to push it, right? And as they're getting ready to leave, Dante reads the report that the officer typed up that Dalton gave, the statement. And Dante's like, no, Professor Dalton? He goes, no, he was insistent on going back to his lab. So Dante's reviewing the report. We've got Nathan standing there. Chase may have been standing there too. And he goes, okay. So it looks like the most Rocco's going to get charged with is a misdemeanor because the lab was not vandalized or nothing was stolen, right? He goes, I'm going to release him for till his in our custody till the arraignment. So they bring Rocco out, and Dante, he's in front of Dante, and Dante says, "You are going to be released into our custody until your arraignment at 8 a.m." And Rocco looks at his dad. He says, and so Lulu says, "Okay, we will be there on time." And as Dante was getting ready to walk by, Rocco says, Dad, Dante kept right on walking. And Laura, and so Lulu says, honey, he has to be the police commissioner right now, not your dad. So she hugs him and he glances up. He looks at Laura and he looks at Charlotte. So Laura and Charlotte come to him and he's like, Grandma, I am so, so sorry. I caused you to miss your debate. Oh, it's all my fault. This could really make you. She goes, Rocco, right now you are the most important thing to me. And so Brit's just looking at him and then she realized, okay, you know, he's going to be released. And so Lulu is they're getting ready to walk him out. And she goes, what are you doing here? And she said, I just wanted to make sure Rocco's okay. She didn't even pretend. I just wanted to make sure Rocco's okay. Because she knows the keys, and she remembered when they had a chance because she searched her purse. This is before Sidwell got there. And she goes, it's not here, it's not here. And then she's thinking, she sent them to go get her purse. Right? So anyway, Lulu takes him past Brit. But that's going to be interesting because Rocco is going to get a little slap. He's going to catch a little. I'll bet you ultimately, Dalton's going to have to drop it, or Rick is good enough that Rick is going to get it dropped, right? But either way, I'm looking forward to tomorrow to find out how it's going to happen. Rocco is in trouble, but at this point, and look, Emma and Gio, well, their feet aren't out of the fire. Dante is really going to let Gio have it as he should. Because they were wrong, 100% wrong. And this should teach Geo, don't ever, ever listen to Emma Scorpio Drake ever again with her bright ideas. And her grandmother ain't even there as the police commissioner to even try to shield and protect her, because she sure would in a heartbeat. So anyway, everybody, that is it. That's it. I'm actually gonna look forward to Rick slicing and dicing things up. We all wish, goodness, and I hate saying the actress that plays Diane. I should have looked up her name, but I didn't have time, y'all. A speedy recovery, because nobody can win a case like Diane, except for she didn't do to me too well with Michael's divorce hearing to me, right? I it was just okay. Diane hasn't been at her best. The writing for her, the actress is fine. The writing for her has not been at its best for Diane. And that's just my opinion. All right, everybody, we got a vote, another vote. How about it's down between these two. Polyester Pascal or Pesky Pascal. Now, the reason why I'm leaning to Pesky Pascal, do you see how fast I'm able to say that? Like I was able to say Pajama Pascal, Pesky Pascal, Polyester Pascal. That takes a lot more in those syllables going on. So tell me what you all ultimately, it'll be I'm going to take a tally. We're down between, these are the final two. Polyester Pascal or Pesky Pascal. That's what I want you all to vote on. Okay? And isn't it funny? We're doing a vote on a character that isn't even that prominent. But he is a pest, an absolute pest. He's a parasite, Pascal. But anyway, so, Polyester Pascal or pesky. But don't throw Parasite Pascal in there, because I'll forget I said it tomorrow. That one that just popped into my head right now. So I'll be back tomorrow with another daily recap of General Hospital.